so we're going to take our, let's turn the light on. Oops, that doesn't help. There,
And then it was like,
okay, so we're going to take our 1/4 inch flat, or a 6 or an 8, either one would be fine. And I'm going to base in my beak. I'm going to take a little tiny bit of my golden brown, and it's on my dirty brush, and I'm just going to kind of chisel it there just a little bit. You're wanting it to kind of fade into the beak, so you have a little golden,
just like on here.
yeah, so as if it was shading. And then with the dirty brush, I pick up a tiny black. We are not talking a lot, so I just want to have a dirty brush, a little bit of black, work it in, and it's just, and you can make a little, but if I had black on the brush, almost looks like my transfer line there.
Yeah.
And what you do want to do when you're painting like this, so I'm just going to bring a bit more of the golden brown out on the bottom here. You don't want to leave your transfer lines. You want to make sure that you come to the edge of them on your outside edges, because you're not going to be able to erase them. They would wash off after a period of time, but it'll bug you for a while, and you have to, of course, let this dry for a while. So we have our yellow. You can back and forth depending on how much yellow you want in there. Play with it, but we just wanted to have some yellow, have some gold, and slide that little line in. Now, people want to make sure that your beak, you see this, how it comes over here? I'm just going to do it with the brush. You want to make sure that your beak is coming down there. Now, I over-exaggerated it there a bit, but it does come down there. So that's important. We had so many people, for some reason, ended up with beaks that were just cut right off short like that. It's up in there, and it kind of leans down this way. I'm going to dirty it with a bit of the golden brown too there. All right, so that's where you're going with this. Just start first with our beak. So I'm going to take the darker brown mix that I made with a bit of black, and I'm going to apply it along the bottom of the tail. I'm going to give my brush a wipe, pick up a bit of brown. We're not using a lot of brown, just a little bit, just so we can see the gradual change in our color.
Oh.
And then we're going to use buttermilk,
Oh, 3 colors.
which they've discontinued buttermilk. So to make buttermilk, you can take white with a little touch of antique gold, and it's not too bad. But why they discontinued it, I don't know. So we're going to take buttermilk, and I'm going to come from the top of the tail and put my buttermilk. So I'll put it all the way along the top so that I'm able to have that bright color. Give it a wipe, and then I'll just back and forth between them. And you want to do them as if they're individual tail feathers. Now after we do that, we have little lines on there. You can just take you can do a liner, or you can take, so I'll take my flat shader. I'm going to pick up some of my dark mix, and I'm just even going to darken it a smidge. I don't want them to be black, but I do want them to be prominent. So, and we're just going to do a couple of little markings. I'm just using the corner of my brush and just tapping in these lines. You don't want it to look like one complete line going all the way across. We don't want to have them connect each other. So I just corner of the brush, I'm putting some of these little lines on here unevenly so that they're not the very same on each one. If you feel like you need to strengthen between your feathers, you can bring a little bit, but you're not looking to be perfect lines or anything either. Okay, so that's his little tail feathers. Okay, so we're going to start with our lunar blender on his head. And I'm using my dark mix. And I apply it here. Now I've got the markings on where I'm going to apply it to. So you're going to apply it along and up to the top of his eyes. So once I put that there, I'm going to take buttermilk with the dirty brush and come from the back end and work my way towards his head, towards the dark that I've put on there. So we just lightly scratch them in. I don't want them to be in one continual long scratchy. You want them to be individual little feathers. So if you scratch a little bit in little distances, you'll get that appearance. If you pull it in long, he looks like he's from the era of Fonzie. I'm going to go ahead and put a little bit of the buttermilk right here down in his cheek. I'm going to wipe my brush, and on the very top of his head we have a little brown. So this is not the mixed, it's not my dark brown, it's the regular brown. And I'll just scratch a little of that in along these areas. When it dries, you can pop up your buttermilk if you want more. I can scratch a bit more on to lighten in a few places, but you'll find that it kind of soaks in when it's wet. So we want to add some more. We'll go back in afterwards when it's a little bit drier, and you'll pop things up. But for now, this is where I want you to go. All right, that's your mission. There. Okay, so what we're going to do now is I'm going to work on his chest. We're going to go for this area. I've cleaned my brush, so I want to make sure that I don't have it wet, that it doesn't cause my paint to bleed. So I'm going to come underneath his chin with my dark, under the beak. And I'll just kind of fade off down the chest a bit. And then we have it along the bottom. So I'm using the chisel of my Lunar Blender, 1/4 inch again, and just applying it along there. I'm not going to get into the wing section right now. I'm just going to break it up. So now I'll take my buttermilk again, and I'll come in the middle section. I've kind of wiped my brush to clean it. Sometimes it's advisable to actually clean it, but only because if you have too much paint in there of the brown, you won't get a buttermilk. So now I have placed buttermilk here, and I'm just going to just scratch these two colors into each other. So it fades from there and from here. My plan is to still have buttermilk in the middle, and I want to pull a few little scratchies of feathers off the edge. Now, I haven't got much of a chisel left on this brush, and so I want to take my time, don't press. If you press hard, you won't get a little wispy stroke off the edge. So I just want to fade it down into this, and that's good. So that's where I want you to go to right now. So I'm taking my 1/4 inch Lunar Blender, and I'm going to take my dark, which I had made quite dark, and I'm going to apply it along the bottom of the section. Just a few chisel-y marks. And we're going to do the same thing for the rest of the wing below, so I may as well go ahead and put those on there at the same time. So it's giving me a shaped mark. Now I'm going to take my buttermilk, and I'm going to come from here. So again, like I'm using the paint. If you have enough paint on your brush, you don't have to press it in. So don't be cheap with the paint. Chisel it into there, and then I'll come down to the one below, and I'll chisel that in. And we're going to be darkening up along the front chest of it. So I'll just chisel along like so. Dirty brush, so it'll work between our buttermilk and the brown, and it's just back and forth just to soften that dark and get a little bit more. You see how those appear now to look like just little feathers, right? I can even just use the side of my brush. I'm going to look in my little cache and see if I have a brush that actually has a little bit more of a chisel. And I can see right here where these are looking like a line, how we always go back after and say, okay, well, you've got a bit of a line there. I sacrificed this wing just to show you how I would recognize that and deal with it. There. So see how now I broke up that line. It's jagged and uneven. You're wanting these to be like feathery looking. We will go back after with darker and lighter and strengthen things up. So don't worry about that right now. This is the way I want you to get it to. And you can put, while you're here with the dirty, you can go ahead, pardon me, and put the chisel, the dark, above it as well, just to, so it's not a straight line where that wing is. Everything feathers into from dark feathers to light feathers, like so. Okay, that's our mission. So I'm going to use the flat 1/4 inch to apply the dark around my eye. I just want to have a nice, like it's an eyeliner. If you want to use your liner, you can, but I like the nice crisp lines that I'm able to get, because your liner sometimes just skips along the top of the fabric. So, but it's whatever is better for you. If you're more concerned that you think I'd like, now I have nothing, just a little bit of brown left on my brush, so if I drag a little bit here, I can get a little bit of just dirty feathering to calm down that white around there. And when we're looking at our picture, we see that we have a little more light just above this. We're actually going to take our liner, you'll notice on our other picture, we'll take our liner and we're going to pull almost like he's got little eyelashes. Yeah, so we've got little eyelashes in the light buttermilky color. And if you make them too predominant, you just scratch a little of your brown back into it after. So on his eye, and it can be white, but I don't have white out, so I'm just going to go with what I got here. It'll still show up nice. A couple little lines and a bit of a comma. Don't go crazy with your highlight. If you make your, I'll just put a little light in front of his eye. If you make your highlight too strong, this black here, I need a little more black at the back of his eye here. It's not quite round enough. There we go. But if you make your highlight too strong, it looks like he's got cataracts. So you need to make sure that you're not going too crazy with this highlight. So you can bring those little lines.
This is the comma on top.
And that's super zoomed in, right? I'm going to pop these up a little bit more. Just a few little light feathery marks, a little in the front. I'm dragging it on there so that I don't have solid lines of anything. It's just more of a scratchy. So that's what I'd like you to do now. And if at this point, like say you wanted to, you think, oh, I need to have a little more light up top, you can kind of just drag a little bit of your liner. I'm pressing. I'm not trying to paint solid lines, but you can kind of just add a few scratches, whether you're going to go onto his chest and maybe put a few little feathery strokes, or maybe you want one or two throughout his wing. Because these colors won't be blended with anything, they'll stand out more like a little bit of a highlight. everybody's will be different as to what you want to add on to that at that time. Maybe I want to pull a few light ones coming from here. Like I say, everybody's will be different at what you want to add on to it. Okay, so that's, by this point here, we're going to end up saying, okay, we're good with our bird. We're going to go to his legs. All right? So for the legs, we're going to take, for his legs, we're going to take our brown, our regular brown, and apply the leg. You want it to get a little fatter at the top. And his little feet, he's got his 3 little claws that come out, and his back leg. Then I'm going to pick up on the corner of the brush some of the dark, and I'm going to darken it at the top. So this is our dark brown mix. Flip it around, darken it at the bottom of his leg. So there's not much done to it. We just want it a little darker at the bottom.
A little lighter.
Yeah, so they come out a smidgy. And I'll just slide a little dark into that stuff on the bottom. So there's not much to his legs. All right, that's it. So we're going to take, and you can use whichever size you want in your lunar blender. I'm going to pick up the fabric medium on my brush, and then I'm going to pick up my avocado. And with that on the brush, it's going to make it transparent. I am not pressing hard though. I am softly, it's going to make it more transparent. Not totally. The fabric medium is going to kind of thin it down a bit. I never want my ground to end like a straight line along something. So you, did I put it on? Yeah, so you want to just kind of come past where your flowers are going to be and uneven down towards the bottom. I can take a little of into the browns, the dirty browns on the brush, and put a little shadowy in there of the dirt too. And then I'll take the medium and some olive as well. I'll have some of the brush dirty. So we get a nice darker brown. The dirty on my brush will darken the olive and take away the brightness from it. So we'll just kind of chisel that in. Once you've got that in, you're going to do some grass. The easiest way for grass is probably, I'm going to pick up the dirty brown, a little bit of olive on the brush, flatten it to the chisel, and then I'm going to come in and I'm going to use my chisel. But do you see where I'm starting at different places? People tend to want to start grass like this. And you end up with a pineapple plant. So nobody recognizes that, eh? So if you do a grass here and then one over here and move over here, that stops you from doing that. Don't do all of your grass in one section. So I've now picked into, I had the dirty brush, so now I've picked into some, and you can bring the grass up so it sticks up through where our flowers are going to go, if your camera's not in the way. You see when I press hard how I end up having fat grass. That's fine. Most of that ends up behind the flowers anyways. And then I'll still pick up some avocado, and it's still dirty brush, so that I'm going to have different colors. We'll have some lighter grass, we'll have some darker grass, and you never want it to look even. So you see how it looks like I'm looking from the distance, so that I'm seeing some of the grass in the foreground, I'm seeing some grass. Don't get tempted to go boom, 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 all along that last line of ground, Nancy. So you just, you know, we're just going to bring grass in. And once you're done, when we do our flowers, we may decide that we want to go ahead and add more grass. You can stick grass in front of your flowers. That always looks nice. But for now, he doesn't look too bad. Okay, so that's where we're going with our grass. So we're going to take and wet coat using the 1/4 inch lunar blender. And I'm just more or less patting the color onto here. Our yellow. So this is our cadmium yellow. I'm going to touch the edge of the brush, this guy is like a deer foot, into the honey brown and tap it on the edge there. A little more honey brown. Just tap it there, turn my brush around and tap it at the bottom. So I'm just fading it in a little tiny bit. I'm going to take the black. Now I've wet coated them so we could see where they're, or I pre-base coated them so I could see where they were when we're doing our yellow. So I put a little bit of the wet black on, and with the brush dirty, I pick up a little bit of white, tap it in on the palette, and I'm just going to tap in the center of the black a little bit of a highlight. And then we'll go ahead and we'll do our legs and our antennae with our liner in the black. Okay, so I'm going to put a coat of the fabric medium over top of my wing. Bring it down onto the body.
Like canvas.
And then I'm going to do the little wing that's in the background. So this first wing comes down over top of the body. I'm going to pick up a little bit of white on the tip of my brush, and I'm going to put it along the end, and I'm just going to softly drag some of that down onto him. He's going to be outlined afterwards. It's going to be outlined afterwards. So that is going to show up the transparent fabric medium that we put on there. And then I'll put some veins in there. Just with my liner, I'll pull in little veins. So that's our wings. Our flowers, I'm going to use, actually, I'm going to use the heel of the end of a paintbrush. And I'm going to, I already did those ones. Now I added a couple of dots just so that it's easier for you to see, but you don't have to do that. You don't have to do that ahead of time. It's simply a petal dipped into, so it's like using your brush as a stylus. That's it. And I'll do those, and when they're done, I will take my stylus and I will, that's being visible, you can see that under there, right? I'll add the little dots in the center in the honey brown and a few with the, if I got any wet enough to get into, a few in the cadmium yellow. So we'll dot some little dots in the center, and that's that.